would be one of the many that Mr. Lee just touched my life. So just my story of Mr. Lee. And before I start, I'd just like to start off by reading a song that just always reminds me of spiritual giants in my life. So this is a song by Ray Bowles, and the song is, I believe, is titled "Thank You." So, I dream I went to heaven and you were here with me. We walked upon the streets of gold behind the crystal seas. We heard the angels singing, then someone called your name. We turned and saw a young man running, and he was smiling as he came. And he said, "Friend, you may not know me." And then he said, "But wait, you used to teach my Sunday school when I was only 8. And every week you would say a prayer before the class would start. And one day you said that prayer. I asked Jesus in my heart. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm so glad you gave." Then another man stood before you and said, "Remember the time a missionary came to your church, and his pictures made you cry. You didn't have much money, but you gave it anyway. Jesus took the gift you gave, and that's why I'm here today." One by one they came, as far as the eye could see. Each life somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you had done, sacrifices made, until unnoticed on earth, and heaven now proclaimed. And I know up in heaven you're not supposed to cry, but I'm almost sure there were tears in your eyes. As Jesus took your hand and stood before you, and he said, "My child, look around you. Great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm so glad you gave." I just stand here with great honor just to give a testimony of Mr. Lee and his heart for gold, his heart of gold for God. Through your love for God, we are all here celebrating today. Always learning, always growing, sharing, leading, following, and always teaching. Those who God has called you to be reaching. The voice we will miss, who was never short of words for talking. In your heart, you were always planting seeds or watering them. You never stopped short of either one, even though your assignment here on earth may be done. The lives of many for Christ through you has been won. Your service here will always remain in our hearts. Your love for God, your wife, your family and friends, and the lost will never part. Countless memories of Mr. Lee and family. The list of stories can go on and on. I just want to share a couple memories. I think one, just to start off with the Britton family, just starts back when we were little children. I believe it was Caleb's birthday. I just always remember with Irene, we made ice cream from scratch. So that's the first time I ever done that, probably the last time I ever done it, but something I'd like to try again. So definitely. But with Mr. Lee, I think one time he asked me if I wanted to go on a road trip with him. And he said it'd be like 5 hours north, and it would be to go get an antique saw. So I did a road trip with him to go 5 hours north to Bellingham, I believe, to go to get an antique saw. Before we ever got to our destination, of course, we made a few random pit stops before we made it to our destination. Our first one, we stopped at the Firs, which is a camp I believe Mr. Lee was heavily involved with, and just reminiscing about his experience there and how it helped him grow. And one thing I remember him sharing about it too is just it was a place where people came together and a lot of times found spouses or significant others. So we got to do a little tour of that. It was actually a really neat camp, fun experience, and just got to hear Mr. Lee, just his experience with that. After that, we went to a peach ranch, so I guess a ranch with peaches. New to me. So he was telling me about the peach ranch, and he was saying how it had the best peaches. They're really, really good. But then before we got to the peach ranch, he asked me if I got the opportunity, or if we had the opportunity, if I could share my testimony. If we got the opportunity. But so about the peaches at the peach ranch, so he said the peach is really good, handed me a peach, I grabbed it, and it like melted in my hand almost. So right then and there, I noticed that the difference between the American good peach and Hmong good peach is very different. I think I can speak for most Hmong people that we like our peaches very hard, not as ripe. So I had to try to eat it. I ate it and probably took a few bites. I don't know what I did with the rest, but just learning. After that, we went inside for a glass of water, and then the opportunity came, and Mr. Lee just kind of said, well, hey, my friend here has a really neat and interesting testimony he would like to share. So I shared my testimony over a glass of water, and that's one thing that I'll always kind of stick in my memory as well too. After the Peach Ranch, we went, I think we made it to our destination. So we're heading to our next destination. He's telling me about this gentleman. He's telling me that he's a pilot, and he has a lot of really neat stuff. And then in my head, I was like, okay, maybe since Mr. Lee served, maybe this gentleman served too, and he's an elderly fellow, maybe he has a lot of neat stuff from the war. Maybe that's why we're going to this place to get an antique saw, because he has a lot of stuff collected. And then Mr. Lee went out with the story and was saying, well, he collects a lot of stuff, and he piles it here, and he piles it there, and he piles it everywhere. So he was a pilot guy, so he just piled stuff everywhere instead of a physical pilot. So I was like, oh, okay, made sense. It took me a little while too. I think it took you guys a little while, but I was just as lost. So eventually, I think we got the saw and made our way back home. So that's one memory I always kind of remember Mr. Lee with. I don't even know why I made the road trip, but I'm glad I did and blessed I did too. And thinking back, I don't think it was really about the antique saw with Mr. Lee. I think it was more about the friendship, the companionship, and just the discipleship of it all. And I'm truly blessed just to have had that experience with Mr. Lee. One of many things we know for sure about Mr. Lee is that he never stopped short of sharing. His heart for others was always caring. He was always creating windows to share the work of God in his life and creating opportunities for others to do the same, using every resource he can get a hold of to help point others to God. I'd like to share one of the many things I have learned from Mr. Lee. You are definitely a man who walked the talk. Your life shine bright, a talk of your walk with Jesus. A man definitely living his calling for God, a life well taught and better yet caught. I will never stop reading, growing, outsourcing, preaching, and teaching as you did. While we're blessed with your presence, you are truly a testimony of a life of what it means to be a man after God's heart, to have fought the good fight, and truly, I know all of us can agree in here, a disciple of Christ. And I just like to end with rereading a line from the song. I just think it paints such a beautiful picture and truth and clarity about the life of Mr. Lee for all of us who are here today too. Each life somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you had done, sacrifices made, unnoticed on earth and heaven, now proclaimed. And I know now in heaven that you're not supposed to cry, but I'm sure there were tears in your eyes as Jesus took your hand and you stood before the Lord. My child, look around you, great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm so glad you gave.